for this session. Today in this session we are going to learn a 9th standard lesson, Portrait of a Lady, written by Pushpan Singh. What do you mean by portrait? It is nothing but portrait means picture. A picture or a photograph is called portrait. Okay. Before going into this lesson, I just want you to think about your grandparents. Being in this modern world, many of you may not living with your grandparents. But I will tell you one thing, that if you are having the chance to live with your grandparents, it's a great blessing for you, because they are more loving, caring, and they will teach us simple things also. When they become older, when they are getting older, they will be having more eagerness to spend time with the Lord. Yes. Here, our author Pushpan Singh also wants to share with us about his grandmother, who was very tender loving, and she was also deeply religious old lady. He was brought up by his grandmother. His parents left him with his grandmother and they went to the city to live. So he was brought up by his grandmother, and he was also relating with his grandmother as a friend. They both used to go together to the school. Old lady, what she will do in the school? They will go together because the school and temple is attached. When he enters the school, she enters into the temple. When he recites alphabet, she used to recite slogans in the temple. At last they will come together. So he related with his grandmother as a friend. And here, this lesson describes about a special bond between grandmother and grandson. And dear students, now let's learn line by line. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. People said that she had once been young and pretty and even had a husband. But that was hard to believe. As here, our author is telling that past 20 years he was with his grandmother. He has seen his grandmother as having wrinkled face. Okay, wrinkled face. So it is hard for him to believe that once upon a time she was very young, she was very pretty and had her husband, because he's seen her as a old woman. So it is hard for him to believe that she was pretty in her younger age, because he didn't see, that's why he is telling this is hard for me to believe. My grandmother's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. He wore a big turban and loose-fitting clothes. His long white beard covered the best part of his chest, and he looked at least 100 years old. He did not look the sort of person who would have a wife or children. He looked as if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren. That means he is telling that he didn't see his grandfather. Only he has seen his grandfather in the photograph. Okay. By looking at that, he is telling he looks very old man. I am also finding difficult to believe that he had wife and children. Only I hope that he had only grandchildren. That means he sees his photo alone. So he looks very old, having a white beard, looks like 100 years old. So in that age, he sees only that photo, the old age photo of his grandfather. So it is hard for him to believe that he had children and wife. As for my grandmother being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. She often told us of the games she used to play as a child that seemed quite absurd and undignified on her part, and we treated it like the fables of the prophet she used to tell us. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Here, he describes the physical appearance of his grandmother. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkles running from everywhere to everywhere. No, we were certain she had always been, as we had known her, old. So terribly old that she could not have grown older and had stayed at the same age for 20 years. Yeah, he's telling she became very old. More than that, she can't become old. That much old she is. So, past 20 years, I am seeing her as she is now. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. She hobbled about the house in spotless white with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop and the other telling the beads of her rosary. Again, she was keeping her house very neatly to balance her. On hand, she used to balance her body and she used to tell rosary. Her silver locks were scattered entirely over her pale, puckered face, and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. Always she would be murmuring the prayers. Yes, she was beautiful. She was like the landscape in the mountains, an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. We can see in her face the peace and contentment. She is happy with what she is and what she has. And she is having peace of mind. Our author is telling that we can feel the peace and contentment when we look at her. My grandmother and I were good friends. My parents let me with her when they went to live in the city, and we were constantly together. She used to wake me up in the morning and get me ready for school. Okay. His parents left her with his grandmother, and she was the one taking care of him. She said her morning prayer in a monotonous sing-song while she bathed and dressed me in the hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. Yeah. She used to wake him up in the morning. She used to give him bath. Okay. And she used to dress him. By that time, while she is doing this kind of work, she used to tell the mama the prayers. Okay. For what she will murmur the prayer, then only her grandson will remember the prayer by heart. I listened because I loved her voice but never bothered to learn it. Okay, he also listened. She used to sing the prayer, so he was listening the prayer but he didn't learn it. Then she would fetch my wooden slate, which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk and tiny earthen ink pot and a red pen. Tie them all in a bundle and hand it to me. After a breakfast of thick stale chapati with a little butter and sugar spread on it, we went to school. She carried several stale chapatis with her for the village dogs. Yes, yeah. He's telling that he was relating with his grandmother as friend. She used to take care of him very well. She used to wake him in the morning. She used to bathe him. She used to dress him. While she does this work, she will be singing the prayer. Then only he will learn. But he is telling that I loved her singing, but I failed to learn that prayers. And after giving bath and dressing, she used to take the slate. In olden days, we used to write with slate. Okay, so she used to clean the slate and she used to take, and also she used to feed him with chapati, butter and sugar. Okay, and after that she used to take 1 or 2 chapatis to school. While they go to school, she used to take that chapati. For whom? For village dogs. My grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. Okay? They used to go together to the school because the school and the temple were attached. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer, while the children sat in rows on either side of the veranda singing the alphabet or the prayer in a chorus. My grandmother sat inside reading the scriptures. When we had both finished, we would walk back together. This time, the village dogs would meet us at the temple door. Yes, in olden days, instead of having school, they made temple as a school. So the students will be sitting in the veranda and they will be singing alphabets. They will be learning alphabets. Instead, his grandmother used to sit inside the temple and she will be reciting slogans and she will be praying. At last, they will come back together. While they come, they used to meet the street dogs. They followed us to our home, growling and fighting with each other for the chapatis we threw to them. Yes, while they come, they used to throw the chapatis to the dogs. They used to fight with each other to take the chapati, and they will be following grandmother and her grandson. When my parents were comfortably settled in the city, they sent for us. That was a turning point in our friendship. Although we shared the same room, my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go to an English school in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the streets, and she took to feeding sparrows in the courtyard of our city house. Okay, now in the beginning we told that the parents were settling in the city, so they took him also in the city where he started his friendship, because when he was with his grandmother in a village, they used to go together. Here he joined in the English school where he has to go by motor bus. So he didn't have that much relationship with his grandmother which he had before. And he was also telling there was no dogs to give them something. Dear students, I hope you understood these 5 points. Let's continue in the next lesson reminding that. Thank you.